Oh, good God. Well, it seems that there's this whole community thing that's beginning to develop on YouTube. And I've been seeing all sorts of different things where people have responded to one another, where people have put up testing questions and things like that. So I decided I would do one myself. And this is one that somebody started asking people to list 50 things about themselves. So I'm going to list 50 things about myself. I met Judy Garland once. I sat in the lobby of the Fairmont Hotel in San Francisco and waited 2 days for her to check in. I got to meet her, I got to take her photograph, and to get her autograph. I drove with a bunch of other people many miles across a completely barren desert to see a pufferfish who was in a hole so deep that you couldn't even see the water. I've watched newborn pigs being at the Alaska State Fair in a barn at midnight. I had cocktails with Carol Channing one time before an award show in Los Angeles. I wrote a song for a musical, collaborated on a song for a musical that actually played in New York for 2 weeks. I wrote a book. You can look me up on Amazon.com or in the Library of Congress. I took a hot air balloon ride in the Sierra Nevadas near Lake Tahoe. I once peed on the floor of the public library. I played the doorbell once in the orchestra for a musical performance. It's not easy to play a doorbell. I took ice skating lessons from an Olympic skater, what was his name? I can't remember. I've forgotten the name now. But anyway, he skated in the Olympics. This was back in the 50s. I was a cake decorator for 3 years. I took Chinese cooking courses from Martin Yan before anybody had ever heard of Martin Yan. I threw a pie in someone's face, and someone threw a pie in my face. I dropped out of college after a year, but I didn't tell my mother and father for 6 months and let them think that I was actually going to school when I wasn't. I went on my first diet when I was 10, and I've been on and off diets ever since. I'm 63 now. I gave birth to 5 children naturally with no drugs whatsoever, no epidural, no nothing. I buried 2 of those children, one when he was 24 and one when he was 30. I rode a camel in the rain, one of the more ridiculous things I've ever done. I've been to New York 3 times, and I hated it all 3 times. I held a snake once, and it peed on me. I had one sister. She was 4.5 years younger than I am, and she was murdered by her lover when she was 24. That was back in 1971. I've never smoked anything. I've never taken any drugs. I'm a theater critic who hates Shakespeare. I was going to be a nun when I graduated from high school, but at the last minute I changed my mind and I never did go. I'm terrified of roller coasters. I've marched in 3 gay pride parades. I had the romantic lead in my high school play. I've been to England, Ireland, Scotland, France, and Australia, and also Canada, but I don't think Canada counts. I never liked rock and roll. I still don't. I'm a 3rd-generation San Franciscan, and there aren't very many people who can make that claim. I've never owned my own car. I've been married for 41 years to the same person. I can speak a little French and a little Portuguese. I've seen whales 3 different times, 2 from a boat and once on the shore in Hawaii. I've had dolphins swim around at my feet. That was really fun. That was in Australia. I toured the White House when John F. Kennedy was in office, and many years later I was back in Washington, D.C., and I spent about 10 minutes in an office with Senator Mike DeWine, who was actually visiting with a friend of mine, but I got to sit in the office and take pictures. At one time, I could kind of almost write my name in Braille. That's really difficult, you know. When you read Braille, you read it like you read a book from left to right, but when you write it, because the imprint has to come through the paper, you write it from right to left. So you have to write it backwards and upside down in order to read it. We have hosted 70, that's 70, students from 14 different countries over a 10-year period of time, which is how I know a little Portuguese. I've harvested huckleberries in the wild. David Gerald, who wrote Star Trek's The Trouble with Tribbles, is a good friend of mine. I once had dinner with David and Dorothy Fontana in a little hole in the wall, and I was sitting there thinking, these are two huge names in Star Trek history, and I'm just sitting here having hamburgers with them. Someone once painted a portrait of me, as a matter of fact, it's right here above my head. I have 6 arms. There, that was supposed to be me. That's called the Word Goddess. The person who painted that picture was a physician, an obstetrician, and I hope she has better aim when she's catching babies. I'm a medical transcriptionist. I regularly donate blood. I can drive a stick shift. Matter of fact, try parallel parking, driving a stick shift on a hill in San Francisco if you want to know what driving skills are. And we're down to number 50. I know that it's possible to fit 2 grown women and 2 huge Christmas trees into a little tiny car because I've done it. So that's my 50. I don't know when the original request for this was made, but I decided what the heck, it sounded like fun, I'd do it. So I'm going to look at some of the other ones now and see how we all compare with one another.